let me remind you what we have learned in high school probably, that how a country can claim a maritime area based on this United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. This is the water here, and this is what we call a baseline. Baseline is a point from where you claim the water, maritime area. This is what we call internal waters, inside it, and then territorial sea for 12 nautical miles, and then contiguous zone, exclusive economic zone over here, continental shelf, and we have also laut bebas or high seas, and then the area. So the idea is to tell you basically that a country can really claim, theoretically based on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, a very large maritime area from its coastline. And also to tell you, if you talk about territorial sea, for example, it covers actually not only the ocean, but also the airspace. So it covers 3 layers: airspace, the water, and also the seabed. While if you talk about continental shelf, it covers only the seabed. So we talk about continental shelf, it means we are not talking about fish, for example, the resources, but oil and gas. It also comes in 3D, like movies. This is the baseline. I think it's easier for you to imagine this. And this is the limit of territorial sea, exclusive economic zone, which covers the water and the seabed only, and continental shelf, which only covers the seabed. I don't think I have to explain more because the animation already tells you quite well. And this, in particular, the EEZ is a new regime. So it came only in the 3rd United Nations Conference on the Law of the Sea, which is then accommodated in the Law of the Sea Convention 1982. So before we did really recognize this regime. How it is actually done? We talk about the distance 12 nautical miles, 24 nautical miles, 200 nautical miles from the coastline. This is how it is done actually. So using the method, we call it envelope of arcs. This is how we define the outer limit of, for example, if the arc is only 12 nautical miles, so it means that this would be the outer limit of territorial sea, if you agree with me. So we can see that there is an irrelevant base point here, which is not useful in this case. So this is actually the territorial sea now, belongs to this country. So some of you might think this way, that it is actually the replica of the base of the coastline, and then placed in the 12 nautical. It is not the case, which is you can see the difference here. If you use that method, you will lose this much, around that much territorial sea. So the one that is used is the first one, the envelope of arcs. Okay, and it was the normal baseline, what we call normal baseline is the baseline that follows the shape of the coast. But if the coast is like this, irregular, a country can define what they call it a straight baseline. And then this is how they claim the limits of territorial sea from that particular baseline. Okay, by now you can really tell that I'm a very technical person, right? Is there a lawyer here? Political scientist? If I'm not, if I'm a lawyer, the slide will look like this, which is quite boring. So how about Indonesia? Indonesia is an archipelagic state, so it does not claim a territorial sea or maritime area from each island, but from a line we call archipelagic baseline. So instead of claiming it from each island, Indonesia encloses itself into a system called archipelagic baseline, and then from that particular baseline, Indonesia can claim territorial sea, EEZ, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the illustration here, this is how Indonesia is illustrated best, actually. So this is the baseline. And then all waters within is called archipelagic waters, which belong to Indonesia or belong to that particular archipelagic state. And then this is internal waters. Territorial sea, 12 nautical miles, and then contiguous zone, and EEZ over here, and continental shelf. So, theoretically speaking, it can claim a very large maritime area, right? So if we illustrate it this way, a small dot in the ocean can actually claim a very large maritime area. Theoretically, like one single country, if there is any, if there is no neighbors around, it can claim like 1 million times of its land size, which is huge, based on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. But is it possible for a country to do that? Of course not, because countries are close to each other, right? The distance are close to each other. So that's why a country needs to share the ocean with others. This is the illustration. If there's a country A and then country B here, neighbors, very close to each other, the first they have to define is the baseline, and then from baseline they claim territorial sea, and then contiguous zone. So up to this point, no problem. They don't have to negotiate, they don't have to fight. But as soon as the country claims EEZ, which is 200 nautical miles, and ZB is also entitled to, there will be overlapping claim, right? And then here where maritime boundaries are required. And of course it is not that easy. If it is this easy, I wouldn't be here. So yeah, this is basically what happens and how a country or two countries need to delimit their maritime boundaries. So this is then the final arrangement after the delimitation. So if you are with me, this is actually the maritime boundary, EEZ limits of state A, right, which is defined unilaterally, while this part also the limit, but define it bilaterally. So in the term is called, this is what we call limits, and this part is what we call boundaries. So that's why we use the different limits and boundaries in this case. So to define this, of course, very easy because it is unilateral. But to define this, it can take like decades because it is involving at least two countries to negotiate.